Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this webinar of Carv. And we have people dropping in still. So we are giving this a few more minutes and then we start the event. So give us a couple of minutes, okay? Thank you so much. All right, guys. Barent, are you ready?
Absolutely.
So welcome everybody to this webinar. Treat your candidates like your best customers. How consumer brands transform their recruitment process with AI. That's a whole mouthful. Um, I'm calling in from Austin today, and there's a big event here, actually a technology event. So had many conversations about this topic, except in the last few days. Barend, you're joining from Amsterdam today, right?
Absolutely. Where it's rainy like always.
Well, it's sunny here. I think it feels like we're in the desert. Yeah, welcome everybody. So we're gonna share a lot of information in this webinar. We try to talk for around 5 to 45 minutes, and then open the floor up for for conversations and questions of the crowd. So feel free to just drop your questions in the chat during the webinar. We try to answer most of them. So to keep this interactive with the audience and between me and Barend. But we love talking, right? So let's start. Maybe before we dive into this whole topic, quick introduction on ourselves. My name is Matthijs, one of the founders of Carv. Together with Barend, built another company called Harvard.com. We were one of the market leaders in volume hiring technology globally. Barend, do you have anything to add to that?
It was a beautiful ride, and Carv is even better. So let's talk
Wow,
about Carv today.
let's do that. So Carv, we have an agentic recruitment platform. We're basically an overlayer over your ATS, and we take over all different kind of recruitment tasks of recruiters. We have definitely a vision that the future of recruiting is human, but humans will focus on building relationships with candidates, but the heavy lifting will be done by AI. If your job is a task right now, you should be pretty worried. And guess what? Recruitment is a chain of tasks. So we should definitely redistribute tasks between humans and technology. And you need knowledge and you need a platform to do that with. Um, General information about Carv. We're founded in 2023, launched our platform for recruiters in 2024. Me and Barend are 15 years in this industry. We operate from offices in Amsterdam and New York, and building on this new recruiting journey. We believe the recruitment tech stack will fundamentally change in the coming years because all these new possibilities with the technology that's around. And today, I want to give you a little bit of an insight in how that is actually evolving under the hood. If you look at Carv, we work for the largest consumer brands on the planet. Not only consumer brands, we're also big in staffing. But we actually we work for a lot of customers that are not hiring tens of people for the same position or hundreds, but thousands, 10,000s, and sometimes 100,000s of people in the same position. And our ambition is always to go from Carv to contract as soon as possible. And we have cases, we did an earlier webinar with DHL, where someone applies and within a few hours they have a job and they can work. AI actually makes that possible right now, and this was years ago absolutely unthinkable, and now it's possible. So today we're going to give a little bit more insight on how that actually becomes reality for the biggest brands on the planet. But before we do that, we're going to zoom in a bit on the current recruitment reality for consumer brands like yourself. And Barra, maybe you want to take the word here.
Yeah, and we dive into specifically the reality of consumer brands because it's different. I mean, from the outside world, if you talk about recruitment, people think it's all the same, right? It doesn't matter if it's volume hiring, low complexity, high complexity hiring. But we believe that when you are a consumer brand, you have additional complexity, additional dynamics, but also additional requirements from applicants. So let's have a look into what that means. Well, I think you will recognize this if you represent a big brand. You can't always control the inflow of candidates, right? Candidates fall in love with your brand. And because they love your brand, because they love your product, they also want to be part of your community and they also want to work for you. So we work for companies where sometimes more than 70% of their applicants is also a regular buyer of the products they offer. So your clients or your applicants are your customers, and they can apply in masses that you do not expect and that you do not control. But then another problem, when they apply, there's often a mismatch in expectations because they fall in love with your brand. They fall in love with what you present to the outside world. But sometimes what happens in the back office, what happens inside is less romantic, is less attractive. And it's important that people have a realistic expectation of the job because else they leave. So they come in because they think it's an amazing brand. They expect a job that is actually not there. And then they leave and you have a problem with the brand again. So this is a nice example where we notice people like to work at clothing stores, especially young people. But the reality is that when the shop closes, you still have to clean up for over an hour. And that's not always what they expect when they see the beautiful facade of the store itself. So we have high volume.
In this case, Barend, the Zara case is so funny, right? Because I think if you're a consumer brand, one of the things that are extremely important in the business case is attrition. So you onboard people on your brand, they work in your brand, and then you want to treat them as customers, but you also invest a significant amount of money to get them to work. If those people leave in the first 6 to 9 weeks, that's a lot of money that is involved here. So I think why the Zara case is so fun, because we actually work with them and had some insights here, is people expect that working at Zara is helping customers. Oh, fun. They love Zara themselves. So a lot of the applicants at Zara, they connect the job to their own experience in the Zara. So this is happening a lot with consumer brands. Same with booking.com, right? You expect, oh, nice, holidays. If I work at the customer service department there, I probably talk about holidays all day. No, the reality is you talk about with angry customers all day. And in Zara, well, everyone now can have this aha moment. When you walk through the Zara, it has nothing to do with helping customers. Indeed, Barend, your example, it is just continuously navigating the exploded store that where you walk to, and you need to do. You're basically a cleaner of clothes. That's what you are,
Cleaning the mess. Absolutely.
cleaning the mess. And that's for us always a realization as a consumer brand. What is the perception of an applicant of your brand, and what is the reality of the job? And it's a responsibility in the application process to really bring that to the forefront.
Absolutely. And when we will talk about solutions later, we will also talk more about that. How can you bring it to the forefront so people can decide for themselves that they don't like it before you even have to reject them, and you reject them from your brand?
Yes.
So uncontrolled volume in some cases of people that don't really understand where they're applying for. And then there's another thing happening. In general, we see that the expectation is that teams get smaller. So often recruitment is a cost center. You need to be as efficient as possible. So we have high volumes of applicants coming in that want to be treated in the best possible way with the wrong expectations. And then you have to manage that with a shrinking team. If you add all those things up, you will see that there is a reality that candidates expect when they're coming in and the reality that they get. So candidates sometimes expect a red carpet treatment, right, with a really personalized journey, that the journey in the application process is comparable to the journey they have when they buy online for you, or when they book a ticket, or when they book an hotel. And they expect the recruitment team to be there 24/7, because that's what the company does, right? The company is always available. So why not the recruitment team? So they expect a process that is built on building relationships, while the reality is often that the process is built on executing a transaction, that we implemented technology, that we implemented processes that drive efficiency, but that doesn't bring the candidate to the experience that the candidate is expecting. And that can have some negative impacts, Matthijs. And I think you can share more about that.
Absolutely. So if we look at the impact of this and how where this is resulting in, we look at other brands, because there is of course a lot of research already been done from the outside world and the inside world in companies of consumer brands has impact in the brand. Well, the thing is, if you are a huge consumer brand, you have a huge example because your brand in itself is already a recruitment machine. So TA leaders that we spoke to in the past 15 years, sometimes we even have to remind them your brand is the recruitment machine. And that comes with a huge responsibility. One, you have an advantage, you can attract much more people. However, it's also a big burden because you need to make sure that all those the applicants that you attract are probably the buyers of your brand before they apply. Look at Nike, 97, 79, 97. 97% of the candidates were rejected, and 30% of them will not apply again. So that means that the experience of getting someone in your funnel is so closely connected to connecting someone to your brand, being a buyer of your brand itself, but also to your employer brand. So for them, that's a huge responsibility. And in this case, it could negatively impact their brand if they don't handle that well. L'Oreal, we say, because you're not worth it, we said 75% of the applicants got ghosted and 60% are less likely to buy from the brand again. This is actually true. I have an experience myself with a store in the Netherlands when I was young. When I applied, a grocery store, they didn't give me any response, or a response that I didn't like. And every time I walked by that store in the years after, I thought, no, I'm going to take the other grocery store because I just had this negative experience. This is happening to each consumer brand, and this is how the human mind works. So if you look at Airbnb, belong anywhere, just not here, 64% of the applicants feel excluded from the brand community after a rejection. The perception of an applicant, a person, when they apply to this brand is high. Why? Usually those people apply if you apply for a customer service job at a BPO, a business process outsourcer, let's say Teleperformance, we probably all know that, there is no real emotional connection to that brand. But we should realize, if you are a big brand, that there is a significant emotional connection to that brand. And if you got a rejection from that brand, that emotion is triggered and it does something to you. That is also a huge opportunity. Why? If you do it well, even if they're not being hired, you can actually strengthen your brand. So that's the opportunity here. It goes two ways. What can also happen is the case from Virgin, which is an older case, of course. Probably everyone in consumer brand hiring knows this case. They did an in-depth research on what is the connection between the loss in revenue because we offer a rejection experience to candidates. Well, in this case, Virgin calculated there, as you can see, a major cost involved here. Why I love this research so much is because they were, I think, bold to put this out and to actually make this problem visible. They also afterwards put in a lot of measures to improve candidate experience. We should just realize that this is a real problem. We work for a big retailer in the Netherlands, and they told us when they worked with us, started working with them for years ago, and they said, we know, we did research that every person that we reject is a cost of one time the average spent in the store per person that we reject is the damage that we have. So we need to make sure that we return our rejected applicants into customers. What can also happen is the other way around, right? So as a consumer brand, there's also a situation where news in the outside world that is not even having anything to do with your recruitment strategy is impacting your brand. For example, in this case, if a OpenAI has bad or negative publicity, this is immediately affecting the employer brand of OpenAI. So a bad brand name affects your hiring. This is something a brand always needs to deal with and have an unpredictable inflow of applications when the brand is affected. So that's why we, in a lot of situations, work together with the corporate communication teams of our consumer brands, because recruiting and company brand, employer brand and company brand are so closely connected, and they should always communicate and act in the same way. Barend, let's fix this problem. You have
Yeah,
the
why not
solution.
fix it, right? Absolutely. And I was also thinking about your comment that you were rejected at the local supermarket. And I was wondering, how would your life look like if you would have been hired there? Would you still live
Yeah.
there and be now the supermarket manager?
No. Actually, the news is I started applying at the competition and I got hired there. Yeah. And the rest is history.
And the restaurant, now you're in recruitment tech, right? That's how life goes.
That's it.
But let's talk about fixing it, and let's also talk about what's happening. So what you see here right now is a typical consumer journey. I think if you will talk to the internal marketing and commercial teams, they will explain to you that it's way more complex than this. But in general, this is the cycle of a consumer, exploring what the options are, evaluating products or services, ordering, receiving it, being happy, getting marketing touch points, and do it all over again. So this is the general loop of all consumers for consumer brands. But then at a point, some of them, and often a lot of them, they see something different. They are on this journey, but then they say, hey, there is a career page on this website. I see vacancy, I see job opportunities. And then they leave the journey that they love, the journey where normally marketing teams have invested heavily in to make it the most beautiful experience ever. And they go into a sidetrack. It's almost a bypass where they go through a different process from the same company. And that process is high over, I apply somewhere, fill in some forms. If I'm lucky, I have an interview. If I'm unlucky, I don't hear anything, or I get an automated rejection. And if I'm really lucky, I'm hired, but we already learned from the metrics that that is only a small percentage. And the people that are hired, obviously, they're proud, they're happy. They go back into their consumer buying circle. But what we just learned is that a lot of people that are not hired or that are ghosted or are rejected are not going back into the consumer journey. And that's where the real costs are of having a bad application experience if you are a consumer brand. So why is it like this? Why don't we fix it? Why don't we give all those candidates the red carpet treatment like we all would love to do? Well, simply put, it just wasn't possible. So right now, but also with Harvard, our previous company, we built technology to hire at scale. And yeah, technology always was shaped in pretty rigid forms, in linear processes. Sometimes it was a little bit personal, right? We had an amazing chatbot that could chat with you, and then, well, look how personal it is. But in the end, um, it would only be possible to give a really amazing experience if you could hire an infinite number of recruiters. And I think that goes for everyone in this webinar. If you could hire 100,000 recruiters tomorrow, you could call all applicants, make a real connection with them, have in-depth conversations, and give them the best experience ever. The problem is that budget is not there. That's just, of course, not possible. You can't scale your recruitment team infinite until recently, because that's exactly what changed. Today, and that's what we're going to talk about in this webinar, it is possible to scale your recruitment team infinite. In the introduction, Matthijs already shared, if your job is a task, you should be worried because tasks are taken over by AI. And luckily, recruitment is a chain of tasks that can be taken over by AI. So by bringing the right tasks in the equation and letting them handling them by AI agents, you can give each applicant a personalized experience that is completely in line with your brand and completely in line with the expectations of the applicants. So this is the solution to the problem. And yeah, let's look a little bit under the hood on how this works, what this is.
Yeah. So the solution to the problem, let's make that more specific. And by the way, later on the webinar, we're going to give some examples of this. From digital into intelligent, we talk about this all the time. Everyone is talking about digital transformation for the past 15 years. But what is AI bringing to the table? AI is bringing to the table that we are going through the intelligence transformation. And what does it actually mean? So digital versus intelligent. I think one of the learnings that me and Barend always try to explain to our customers, if you look at earlier conversations, is that many leaders are now thinking that AI will solve the problem, but it will not. If you look at earlier innovations, the technology will not solve the problem. It doesn't have any value in itself. The value only comes when you redesign the operating model around it. And what does it mean for recruiting? Many leaders are just thinking, oh, how do we implement AI in our current process? But the reality is, if you just put the technology in your current process, the efficiency gains will be almost zero. If you look at earlier innovation, it also happened. The value only comes if we think, hey, we have this new technology at hand now. And if we would start from scratch with this technology, what would our operating model and our process be? So the leaders that are asking themselves that question, how do we redesign our process? Those are the leaders and the companies that will have significant efficiency gains. So intelligence in this case means left is the old world. You have a linear recruitment process with steps. Why are there steps? Because recruiters need to work in steps. Humans need some kind of a rhythm and some kind of a logical form to work in. But AI doesn't need that, right? So what this actually means, what you're now looking at, is the candidate can now just land on your brand in a recruiting process. I'm applying at this consumer brand at, for example, DHL. And from there on, a journey starts that's fully customized for the needs of that specific applicant. If the applicant needs more information, the agent gives more information. If the applicant says, hey, I worked here 3 years before and then I left because of this reason, oh, tell me what happened. If you are trying to apply for a specific job in that reality and we see, hey, you don't match your criteria, the agent immediately proposes jobs in the company. Or when you're a consumer brand, maybe it can even propose jobs outside of the company that are close to give that applicant a great experience, alternative job routing. If it's scheduling, if that person says, I want to have an interview preparation, you give an interview preparation. So recruitment process is not linear anymore. It is a hub where you land in, and it will serve you exactly at that moment, in the moment you want to be served. And that's what the Carv platform does. We have a agentic layer that lives on top of your ATS with all different kind of agents. And now we have here, like, on this screen, show you 7 agents, but there are actually much more. But for our use cases here, it means hosting the applicant. It means you don't apply for a specific job. You can just come in and you can talk to AI, and AI helps you there. And in this case, all these agents together design your recruitment process, and those agents, they have access to the calendar of the recruiter. We fundamentally believe AI can only be successful if it has access to the same information and the same channels, communication channels, as a recruiter has. So the agent can text via via text messaging, or via WhatsApp. But the agents can also call you when that's more convenient for the applicant. Maybe you're applying at this brand, says, hey, I want to just have more information about this job. The agent says, let me call you. And you have a conversation with the agent. This is all resulting into a very fast and highly personal process that was never possible a few years ago before the new technological possibilities. It pulls data from the ATS to actually have the information that's necessary. Sometimes it even pulls information from other systems, knowledge bases, FAQs, to answer questions of applicants, and it pushes data back. The ATS is the backbone, and the agentic layer is the communication, the intelligence layer for the applicant and the recruiter. Anything to add to that, Barend?
No, it sounds amazing.
Well, that's good. And then if we go on, this leads to a new reality, right? A new recruitment reality, a new way of applicants interacting with these brands in the application processes.
Yeah, and that's sometimes hard to grasp. Like, what are these new possibilities then? It's sometimes hard for humans in general, but if you have a new technology, to see, okay, but what could this mean for me? How could I put this technology in business? So what Matthijs explained is, imagine you have infinite amount of recruiters that can introduce new tasks that you previously didn't do. And those tasks are all designed to give the candidate the best possible experience and to make the best possible hiring decision. What kind of new things can you do, or what kind of things that you already did can you improve dramatically to get this optimal experiences for recruiters and candidates? And we have a few examples there. So first of all, make it about you. So we all know chatbots today, right? They ask screening questions. They ask if you're available in the weekend. They knock you out if you're not a fit, and if you are a good fit, they even update the ATS to make sure that the recruiter is aware. With AI, and especially with an agentic layer that has access to a lot of context. So, for example, not only the ATS, but an agent that understands, in this example, a lot about the Nike business. The conversation can really move beyond screening questions and about recruitment processes. So you can have a conversation that's actually about you and actually about your brand. And the cool thing is, that is also what applicants expect. That is what applicants expect when they enter this process. And to be honest, if you would have infinite human recruiters and you would work for Nike, you want your recruiters to have conversations about the products, about the brands, and to engage with people and really connect them on the topics that you both really love. Well, this is an example where agentic AI, over in this case, we visualize it by text messages, this can also be a phone call, is extremely good in. So you can bring anything that's related to your organization into the recruitment conversation to make sure that that whole conversation is about you. Another example, and this is something we heard a lot in the past, also with Harvard. If you are a consumer brand, you want to hire people that can represent that brand, right? If you are an airline company and you hire people to be flight attendant, you want that flight attendant to represent you and to give the service and to have the personality that represents your brand. It was so hard in the past to automate anything that has to do with discovering someone's personality. Yes, of course, with Harvard as well, you have assessment tests, you have situational tests, you have all kinds of tests, but it was never really conversational. Now with agentic AI, that is something that's possible. And we have agents that can execute a conversation or can monitor a conversation and detect when a candidate gives signals, gives traits that says, hey, this person is likely to fit in the skill profile, in the brand personality profile, in the brand competency profile that you're looking for. Why is that possible? Because the conversations are way deeper than was possible 2-3 years ago. So basically better hires. And then this is also really important. It is inevitable that as a consumer brand, you will reject a lot of people. It's just, what happens if you have too many applicants? Well, there are ways to keep those applicants engaged in communities, maybe for peak hiring. So there are ways to keep them engaged, but in the end, there will also be rejections. With agentic communication, the rejection can, one, be really personal, and you can include communication in there and include information from third systems, for example, discount codes, to give them what we call silk glove rejections. It's still not nice, but at least it's highly personal and in line with the brand.
Yeah, and I think on that topic, Barend, of rejection, I think we see, if you look at candidate research and you ask them, what is it, if you are rejected, what do you want actually? And then, of course, giveaways is nice, but in the end, the number one answer is give me another job, right? So our agent always has the goal to first see, is there an option to place this person in another job in the company? And this happens so often successfully. If you apply for a role in a store at a grocery store and you're rejected there because there are too many applications, or your working hours do not match what they're looking for, and we just ask them, hey, would you be open to a delivery role? Or would you actually be open to work in the warehouse? So many success cases. So just applicants that usually would go dark and go to dust are now basically having a new life in the flow. And there are so many brands that have these opportunities out there. The second thing is we have cases already where two of our customers say, hey, well, we are looking for English-speaking persons in our customer service area, but they're literally next door from a Dutch call center doing the exact same work, but you don't have to speak English. They reject all these people that don't speak English, and we just bring applicant A to the company that is actually speaking, where it's only Dutch speaking. So it's just about bringing value to the applicant, to the brand, and just making sure of more like symmetry in the labor market. So many brands can benefit more from this if they would open the doors to those type of solutions. And AI can now do this. It has the intelligence to make those matches outside of your own business as well.
I think it's a great example also on, we often say AI is technology and we compare it with technology. So they ask, how does Carv relate to ATSs? But that's not the question. The question is, how does AI relate to what humans would do? And the three things that Matthijs just described: first, look for an alternative job within the organization. If not possible, look for an alternative job in the proximity. And if that's also not possible, say goodbye in a really nice way. That's exactly what a human recruiter would do, what a good human recruiter would do if you would have infinite recruiters available. And that's exactly what the behavior that the agent is then mimicking. And then also on an operational level, people expect speed, especially from certain companies that, for example, ship in the same day. How is it possible that you can ship in the same day, but I have to wait 6 days for an interview? Well, that is the case because you work with technology that is not intelligent. But if it's intelligent and the agent has a conversation with an applicant and the applicant shares that he's a good fit, but also that he's urgently looking for the job, the agents that we deploy, they can literally look in the calendars of all the recruiters and say, okay, in that scenario, I will schedule an interview for tomorrow. So you schedule faster than you ship. We also know, and we all know this, time to hire is crucial. If there is a moment where you're peak hiring, and maybe in that moment, the applicant flow is not too much higher than what you actually need, then you want to make sure that every qualified applicant is hired. And then the speed makes all the difference for many roles. And the AI enables this. If you connect the dots that we just showed, that's an applicant coming in, you have a real conversation about your brand. You can match based on skill and brand personality. If somebody is a match, you can see what's the potential, what's the best potential job for this person. And if it's all positive, we schedule within minutes. And that's what we see with customers now. From apply to interview scheduled in 20 minutes, and not because you clicked through 3 forms really fast. No, 20 minutes because you had a great conversation. And it ended with what we call then technically a human handover. We schedule the interview.
Yeah, and I think we also need to be clear here that in the old scenario where we just use conversational AI, you have the chatbots, the workflows. Many of you might have experimented or work with that, but they are very rigid. So if the candidate goes off script, it completely breaks. The candidate cannot go off script here because it can have a human conversation. That's the intelligent part. It also means that we can go much beyond scheduling. So we have customers that say we have like the first step is knockout questions, screening, and then you need to do an interview with a recruiter or a conversation with a human, and then you need to do an on-site interview. But if you zoom in on the questions they ask, AI can hold those conversations as well. So we have cases where you come in, you apply, you have the knockout criteria, and the AI immediately flags you as a good candidate. The AI calls you, holds the interview, scores the interview, and pushes you to a location or to a specific branch or to a recruiter. So those steps are a proof of a redesign of the process, not just patching a AI solution on a part of your process, but doing it completely in a different way. And that's why you will see the efficiency gains.
Yeah, and also where the experience indeed will increase dramatically. You just mentioned chatbot, and I had to think about, I think it's like 5 years ago when we released the chatbot, and we were so proud, and then the chatbot sent it a scheduling link so that the candidate could schedule, and then we thought, oh wow, this is like a human-like experience. And yeah, I remember like 5 years ago, that was the highest level you could achieve, but now you can do everything you just described. It's really human-like and not technology-like.
It is.
I like this one as well. Manage expectations. So we said this during the intro as well. People come in, they apply for a role, and they have an expectation of that role that's completely not true. And Matthijs shared the example of Booking.com, and that's something we really solved. And where candidates come in and they think they're going to talk about holidays, but well, maybe you had a call with Booking.com yourself. You only call if something is wrong, right? If the pool that was promised is not there, or if the entire room is not there. So 90% of the conversations is not about, hey, can you help me pick the best possible hotel? It's people that were on hold for 30 minutes and are on a place where there is supposed to be a hotel room and there is no room. So those conversations are about dealing with angry people. Well, you can tell this to applicants, and you can put this in a job description, but we know that applicants don't read, and they have a different perception with the brand. So what is possible right now, as a recruiter could do, a good recruiter could do, the agent can ask the questions and then decide, if this person has no experience in dealing with angry customers, I'm going to give him a phone call. And the agent will literally send a message, can I call you for a minute? The phone rings, you pick up, and the agent pretends to be an angry customer. And you as an applicant, you do two things. One, you can experience what it's like. So maybe you decide, this kind of conversation, that's not what I want to do for 6 hours or 8 hours a day. And the agent can measure, are you behaving in the right way? Are you treating an angry customer in line with the company values and the brand values of this organization? The cool thing is, it's not a boring assessment. So it's not that then the agent hangs up and it's done. No, at the end, the agent says, okay, hey, this was just an exercise. I hope it didn't scare you too much, but you responded great. Give some feedback and the conversation continues. Again, and I know that I'm repeating it myself, don't compare this with technology. Don't compare this with assessments. Compare it with humans. If you are an amazing recruiter and you would practice an interview, this is what you would do with a candidate.
Yeah, and I think what we do with our customers here is usually, if you look at attrition, which is usually a problem, 80% of your job is just the job, and it's like common work. 20% of your job is critical incidents. Those critical incidents determine if you like your job or not. And we filter out what are the critical incidents on that specific job on your brand. And around those critical incidents, we create scenarios that the agent can actually call the applicant about and give these and present these scenarios to make that judgment. This is significantly decreasing attrition. You're just preparing applicants better. And by the way, well, you know what the single best way to reject an applicant or to not hire an applicant is if they do self-selection, self-rejection, because then they themselves, then it's not your responsibility anymore. So that's also an important measure here that we can do with the new possibilities.
And what you see, like all the steps that we just showed, it's this can be one go. You apply and just in one go, all these steps are taken. And there is another advantage there. I think a lot of I think joint people in this webinar, it's not a problem today. People faking assessments, faking information, having AI look at the application process and just give the perfect answers. And for a recruiter, it's hard. These systems are getting better and better. We're monitoring what's happening continuously, and we see how these systems improve as well. If applications go in one go, and if, for example, we don't ask you questions in a multiple choice environment where you can take a picture and ask ChatGPT, what should I answer? But it's a phone call where you have to respond, in our cases, in within a second, then there is no opportunity to fake. And that makes the output also valid again.
So many, we come from the assessment space, Barend, the questionnaires, the list, the personality, literally you can now just find the test online, have a second screen open, and just get the right answers. Like those things don't work anymore. It needs to be conversational in real life on the spot. And also you need to be able to check it afterwards if it was real. And we also have some pretty strong measures in place to make that happen.
Yeah, we can't share too much about those measures, but the technology, I test it on my kids because they make their homework in this way. So I have two fatherless people living with me to test it on.
Okay, let's continue. I think what does success look like? We have many cases, but I think the most significant ones, in my opinion, are for the applicant is like, of course, candidate satisfaction and self-selection rates. But I think the use cases now, every week we get messages from our customers. Wow, we had this applicant coming in, and in a few hours he had a job. And that is, in my opinion, still for a brand like so amazing, because you don't lose talent. You win the talent war with those type of things, with speed. But in the end, you can be much more confident that this process is representing your brand. And of course, each brand is different. So when we do deep dives with each other, and I think that's also something we would love to propose, reach out to us, book a call, book a demo. We zoom in on your process, and we almost design your full solution custom to you before you sign a contract with us, before you work with Carv. So even having that deeper dive with us to have that chat and to see how are you not just putting AI in your current process, but how are you redesigning your whole workflow? We have the knowledge of that redesigning. So reach out to us and work with us on that. I think we have a lot of questions and we have 15 minutes left. So Barend, I think it's just good to go over this and step by step. I saw really good questions coming in. So
yeah, shall we start at the top?
Yeah, let's start with Andrew. Do you have the program, the agents with every scenario then? I think it's a very important one, Barend, because it's about the orchestration layers and how we handle that situation. So maybe you can answer that question.
You mean the different agents for HQ and in-store, right?
No. That's not a quick. We will do that one later.
Okay.
You have
sorry. Do you have to program the agents? No, you have to. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, you don't have to program them, but obviously you have to instruct them. And again, human comparison. So we have systems where we train the agents with information that you would normally provide to recruiters when you onboard them. So that's about how does the process look like? How should you communicate? And then we give access to contextual information. So if your agent you want them to share some information about your organization, you don't want to rely on the context in the language model itself, right? You want to control the narrative of the agent. So we integrate with all kinds of contextual information to make sure that it behaves in the same way as a human would do.
Yeah, but I think what is one of the differentiators of Carv, if you, for example, compare it to Agentforce from Salesforce, is we already pre-train and continuously train each agent individually and we take that knowledge to each new customer to customize it in their reality. So Carv has a platform where you build, deploy, manage, and scale recruitment specific agents. And that is so different because there are many ways to spin up agents. But if you only look at screening and scheduling, for example, or job routing, the amount of edge cases and knowledge that's necessary to make that work at a level that you can trust it as a team on a human, trusted on a human level, there's so much work involved there. And that's a difference between a generic agent and something specific. So we take all that knowledge from our other customers, but each new reality will have its
Yeah.
own sauce.
And a valid point. I think what also plays there is compliance. So in Europe, we have the
Yeah.
EU AI Act. In New York, California, also specific legislation, and we make sure that the whole framework is compliant and that you color on a framework that is already there and already
Exactly.
following the rules.
Yeah. Well, we do this for HQ and for stores, or for stores, or when there is a store involved or multi-location. But in many cases, HQ roles are also really high volume if you have a brand. So we do many of the different scenarios. Usually, consumer brands always have volume for HQ roles as well.
All worlds.
And we just design the right flow, and we have this matrix. We call it, we say, like, you have on one axis you have the high volume, low volume, and on the other axis you have the low complexity and high complexity, and that results into four recruitment realities. So a high volume, a low complexity role is usually 90% driven by AI, and the human is just the orchestrator and the controller of the AI. But if your roles are highly complex and low volume, the AI is just supporting the human, but the human is in charge. So if we go into a big brand and we think about the ideal agentic setup, we look at those four categories, and for each role, we determine which place on the matrix is it, and then we go in and we deploy the right solutions.
And I
we
think that
always,
also
yeah,
no, and that also correlates to the question about, does the human still play a role in
exactly.
the process? That depends on the process, and that's why it's so important that you redesign the process before you implement technology.
Yep.
Because in some of the processes, you will go fully agentic. We have customers that they call it from Carv to contract. There is no human involved anymore. But in other realities, you want to have still personal connections, personal conversations.
I read an article this week, Barent, about when the electricity, the innovation of electricity came into the world, and it was about factories. All these factories had steam engines, and most of the factories just replaced the steam engine for a electric engine, but the process stayed the same, and this efficiency gain was zero. And I think that's what we see a lot. You can just replace a specific part of it, but it will not improve your process. Start with a redesign, and then you will see you get the real efficiency gains.
Absolutely.
So, and if you look at the human in the loop, in many volume cases, low complexity, high volume, the human gets the escalations. Only those cases, and the agent is good at spotting escalation, and then the human handles that. And the rest is the AI.
So I think we have also a question
Yeah.
from Wim.
Yeah.
So we are channel agnostic, first of all, and we use whatever channel works best for the process and the use case. And that's also country specific. So if you are I'm in Amsterdam at the moment. If you're in the Netherlands, everybody is on WhatsApp. In the US, nobody is on WhatsApp. In Asia, there are different chat platforms. So it's about the localization to what is used locally, but also the goal. If you want to have an in-depth assessment-alike interview done by AI, do it over voice. Don't ask a candidate to be on WhatsApp and enter 2 pages full of text. So then you use voice. If you want fraud prevention and you want to have it instantly, also use voice. Your second question about the resume, the setup should be in a way that the AI has exactly the same information than a human would have. So as a human, I look at the resume and then I ask questions. That's exactly how our agents work. Our agents are capable to go into, at least all the bigger ATSs, they can literally go into the ATS, see whatever information is available. If necessary, from compliance perspective, they can reconfirm. In your resume, I read you have this certificate. Is it still valid? If that's not necessary, they will never ask for something that's already known. Maybe one step further there. the agent also can have access or has access to all previous conversations that took place by AI or by humans. So if there was an interview and you use the Carv platform, and in the interview was something discussed about, hey, I'm living in LA now, but I want to move to New York, and that was 6 months ago. When the agent reaches out to have a conversation, it can come back to that information and say, hey, 6 months ago, you shared you may want to move to New York. Did that actually happen? So it has access to the same context as the best recruiter would normally have.
Yeah. I think we have much more questions here, but we're going to go quickly here. So, Patricia, do agents call every applicant, and how do they filter the CV? Well, what Baron just explained, the CV is not always necessary anymore, because the question is, what do you need from the CV? What information in the resume do you need? And we just make sure that the agents get that information that's relevant to you and store it into the ATS. And yeah, calling an applicant, it depends. If the customer wants that, because it says we want to have all the information, of course we can do that. But in many cases, it's a waterfall. So we train the AI to say only call candidates that have this specific request or that are in a certain process, stage of the process. However, for us, calling could also be an option that we give to the applicant. We can even say, you can call us anytime. Just ask me and I call you. So we see, and it's also connecting this to the question of Jan, and what are the responses from candidates and how do we perceive such an approach. The experience is really well. If you look at we just did a big grocery store in the Netherlands, and if you their candidate satisfaction scores are extremely high. But what's also interesting, how quick voice is actually becoming more popular. More and more candidates, we see month over month over month. We see our data going up of applicants that are preferring voice chats. So we expect that in the next few years to become a very dominant force. For that, we do not create our own LLM. Or Brian, do you have anything to add to that?
No, and it's also important again that what we do, that if we reach out to the candidate, that they expect it and that it's explained and that it makes sense in the process that you design.
Exactly.
And our internal SLA is that if somebody applies, we reach out within 2 minutes. So it's instantly. Well, and then the response rate is really high. If you just do a design of a process where first the human has to look and then press a button and then the outreach comes and it's 36 hours later, then your response rate will drop dramatically.
Yeah. On own LLMs, I think, Barend, we have a pretty good vision on that as well. Maybe you can share.
Yeah, it was a few years ago. That was an interesting discussion where also large enterprises said, we're going to design our own LLM. Can you integrate with it? And we enable that so we can do it. The reality is that these foundational models are getting so much better fast that it doesn't make any sense in the recruitment use case to build your own LLM.
No, so we use the LLMs, but that are around there. But actually, the layer on top of that, so the intelligence that we add to make it recruitment specific, that's what makes it smarter, better, and different than a usual LLM. If you just connect an LLM to a conversation, it will go horribly wrong.
But
that's what we see. It's fun. I see this all the time. I'm now in Austin at this event, and I speak to a lot of CTOs of big recruitment companies, and they all say, yeah, we started building ourselves and with Replit and Lovable, and we have our own engineering team working on this and this solution. And they all say the same. We spent like yesterday, CTO, we spent $2 million on building that solution. And the moment we put it in the hand of recruiters, it already broke within 2 days because they don't have the clear connection to the business. The amount of edge cases that there will be to do this yourself is just so significant. So the money that's involved to build this yourself or to play around with this yourself is not comparable to the solutions like Carv or others that are around there now. That's a fundamental decision. Cultural differences, of course, the agents can even be trained on that. So, and we also listen to the customer there. Can be tone of voice. Can also be in the US, you cannot ask certain things, or for GDPR or privacy reasons in Europe, you cannot ask certain things. So we make sure that it's always connected to local preferences.
Yeah.
I think this is your favorite topic, Barend. What will happen when the applicants have an AI agent to answer your AI agent?
So the 2 levels there. If it's about operational process, it can happen, right? If our AI wants to schedule a meeting and the candidate also has an AI to manage its calendar, let's go, no problem. When it's about valid and true answers, then it becomes a problem. With voice, candidates can't do this yet on a level where we can't detect it. So I think when it's about when you look at more conversational chat environments, this is a risk. In voice, at least it will not be a problem. I can't explain how all the technical details, but this is not possible yet. I will never say that it's never possible, but when it becomes possible, we will figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah, I think we have some very strong measures in place and also control agents to flag if something is fraud or if something escalates. And that's, I think, the most important thing. If it's just an administrative process, what Baron described, I'm not even against it. I mean, if an agent can help an applicant to just spend less time on that process, as long as when we want to call them or want to reach out to them or when it becomes real, we need to make sure that they are a real person. And that's our responsibility. All right, Barend, I think we're close to the end time and there are no more questions. Again, so I would please just ask everyone to, if you are interested to talk more with us or want to deep dive on this topic, even if you're not ready to look into buying solutions or stuff, but just want to spar about this topic or do a design session with us, feel free to approach us and have this conversation with us, because we love to talk about this. So I hope you all enjoyed this. Yeah, we hope you all enjoyed this. We have almost every month we have new webinars. Please reach out to us and get more information.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you so much.